Welcome to this webinar. Thank you for joining in today. Given the current scenario, we're all trying to make sense of what is happening and help each other come out stronger. So on your screen today is today's agenda that we cover. Please note that there could be technical issues during the session given the work from home scenarios. However, the session is being recorded and we'll make it available to everyone after the session. So without much ado, I would like to introduce our esteemed panel of speakers today. We'll start the session with Mr. Ruel Ghosh, who's founder CEO of eRevMax, a leader in travel tech segment with solutions including Great Tiger Live OS and AgentX. In 2018, Ruel conceptualized the concept of HospitalityUnited.Club, which brings together hotels and tech providers in an informal setting to exchange ideas and knowledge and offer an interactive platform for collaboration opportunities. Our second speaker today is Mr. James Cannon, who's the Sales and Marketing Director at Guestline. He comes with over 16 years of experience in hospitality technology, including leadership roles in Micros and Quadriga. The third speaker on the panel is Mr. Chris Blaine, head of Sojourn's EMEA business. He brings more than 17 years of global experience in launching new businesses and building high-performing teams. Our final speaker today is Mr. Jose Diaz, Chief Commercial Officer at TravelGateX. He has extensive experience in travel and technology with expertise in sales, planning, and profit delivery in high-growth environments. Before we start, we want to get your feedback on current organizational scenario through a quick poll. So I'll just bring up the audience poll. Let me know if you're able to.
Yep, we've got it. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So I see the responses are coming in. I'll just let everybody take a moment to respond. Okay, so we're just sharing the video. 45% of the people say that it's temporarily closed right now. 30% it's partly operational, and for 25% it is fully functional. So thank you all for sharing that. Yep. So Ruel, handing it to you, please take over. Hi, can you all hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes.
Okay. Ruel, can you hear me? You're on mute. Okay, Aparna, maybe we move to the next speaker and maybe we get James to do his slides and we can come back for Ruel.
Okay, thank you very much. And, you know, it's understandable that we have a few technical complexities given the situation that we're all in. So hello, and thank you everybody for joining this webinar, and thank you to HospitalityUnited.Club for hosting this. Firstly, let me acknowledge the hardship and the impact that not just businesses, but individuals are feeling right across our industry and beyond. We will naturally talk a lot about the impact on business, but first and foremost, this is a human tragedy. And my thoughts and the thoughts of everybody at Guestline are with all of those people who are affected by this. Many commentators have quite rightly described this as a crisis, and I doubt that many of us would argue with that assessment. But how long this lasts and how quickly we are able to recover, and indeed what the new normal will look like, will greatly depend on the actions that we take now. And to frame this, I thought I would share one definition of what a crisis actually is. And it's defined as a time when difficult and important decisions need to be made. And I suppose for all of us, that's exactly the situation that we find ourselves in now, both in business and at home. The problem, of course, with difficult decisions is that they are, by definition, difficult. And combine that with the fact that we are in unprecedented times, it means that we are making these decisions without any real frame of reference. So how should we proceed? If you could advance to the next slide, please. My number one message that I would ask people to take away from this today is that you are not on your own. And actually that might sound somewhat paradoxical to say, given the social distancing measures that are in place in many countries across the world. But in truth, probably all of us have witnessed acts of solidarity and seen people reaching out to others with offers of help, again, in life and in business. But even now, many hoteliers will still be in the early stages of shock. They will be experiencing a sense of paralysis in terms of their ability to confront these difficult and important decisions, and they may be struggling to process the volume of information which is coming out from central governments, which itself is evolving on an almost daily basis. So again, what I would say is don't try and shoulder this yourselves. This is not a time, and actually I'm saying this to my competitors out there as well. This is not a time to be working on our own. Competition takes second place in a situation like this. This industry will be better if as many of us, as many of our businesses are able to ride the storm and come out the other side. And I'm particularly thinking about a number of those small startup technology providers, new startup hotels, who are in a very fragile position. And actually right now, all of us should be rallying around and helping every single one of them. So my recommendation to you is use the industry forums, speak to fellow hoteliers, speak to your technology partners and providers, crikey, even speak to your competitors if you're a technology provider. Let's help as many people and businesses get through this as we possibly can. Next slide, please. And let's not forget, we have weathered many storms in the past. And while it is important to acknowledge that none of the things that you see on this slide here cut as deep and were as broadly impactful as what we're going through right now, each one of these presented us with a unique and in some cases unprecedented situation, which we had to make those difficult and important decisions to overcome. They forced us to review how we were working, and in many cases to change, to permanently change, and to establish a new normal. And that's exactly where we are right now. Many people will remember where they were in 2008. I certainly do, when the economic crisis really took hold. And I vividly recall how it forced certainly the business that I was in and every business that I saw around me to review every area of their operation, to look at where they could reduce cost, to look at where they could remove complexity, to look at where they could increase efficiency, and do all of that in the context of not only maintaining the standards of service that they are offering, but actually increasing and enhancing the standard of service as well. In the good times, to a lesser or greater extent, we all take our eyes off of certain things within our business. And if this is doing one thing, and I'm someone that always tries to look for the positives, if this does one thing, it shines a light on those areas of the business where we can be making improvements. And just one example, if I may share it, when I looked back at 2008 and I saw how hotels recovered, and particularly I'm thinking of the hotels in Ireland at this stage, what we saw there was that the recovery started on their ground floor business, in their restaurants and their meeting rooms, which prior to the economic crisis had been a largely overlooked asset that the hotel had. And I suspect that is true for other countries as well. Events such as COVID-19 will shine a light on these areas of the business. And for me, I want us to be able to look back in 6 months from now and take some positives out of this situation. Next slide, please. There are very few things about which we can be certain right now. There are many questions which we cannot answer. But there is one thing that we can be certain of, and that is that this storm will pass. Next slide. But until it does pass, there are things that we can all be doing. And what we do now will have a very lasting impact on how we go forward as a business and indeed individuals. Now, let me say at this point, I am not going to try and give advice to hoteliers on rate strategy, cancellation policies, and so forth. That isn't my place to do that, and I wouldn't dream of trying to tell a hotelier how to run a hotel. But I am going to suggest just a very small things, a small list of things that we can be doing in the short term to manage this situation better. And the first one on there is enable effective remote working. It's a very big difference between remote working and effective remote working. So if you are finding it hard to mobilize your staff and allow them to work remotely, please reach out to your technology providers. I can say that we have had a number of hotels come to us and start talking to us about our cloud technology because, again, this has shone a light on the need to be able to enable your staff to work remotely. So if you're unable to do that or you're feeling your hands are tied, please speak to your providers. Contact your technology partners for guidance and support. This sounds really obvious, but not only can we help you and the other technology companies, of course, help you with the systems that we provide, but ultimately we are speaking to a lot of hotels and we are hearing some of the things that they're doing. And you know, if we can pass on this best practice and these tips to other hotels and help you in that respect, then that's what we want to be doing. So please, again, don't feel isolated. Do pick up the phone, speak to us, speak to your other suppliers and partners and see how they can help you. I skipped over just one thing there on the consolidation of operations. Inevitably during this period, there are going to be some people who have dependents that they need to look after and won't be able to perform their duties at their normal capacity. And sadly, we do expect there to be a number of people who are taken ill over this period. So being able to consolidate some of your operations is something which, again, hoteliers are saying to us that they are looking to do, to give them, to de-risk their operation in many ways. So again, if you are looking at doing those things within your organization and you need help, then speak to your partners. Consider staff training and cross-skilling. I suppose this is one of those things which we all know we need to do on an ongoing basis, but when we are running our busy hotels and busy businesses, it's not always easy to find the time to focus on that. So use this opportunity to do that. And again, just examples, we are hosting webinars and training sessions for anybody that wants to join. And let's be honest, you're doing things now with your systems that you wouldn't do very often, or you wouldn't do ordinarily. And as a consequence, these might be things that you've forgotten how to do. So allow us to help you with that. And of course, visit all of the online forums that you possibly can. Guestline is hosting a COVID-19 hub on our website. You can go to guestline.com/COVID hub. And we will put on there information, not just about our systems, but also our partners and anything which we think we can provide to the industry to help. And of course, there's HospitalityNet, there's HOSPA, there's HospitalityUnited.Club who are hosting this webinar as well today. So these are the things that we can be doing now. But what about planning for the medium term and the recovery when it comes? Next slide, please. So when we think about what do we do now to prepare for the future, I was reminded of a quote from Warren Buffett. He said, the market may go up, the market may go down, the economy may fluctuate, but there is always be intelligent things to do. So what it's about now is finding those things that we should be doing now to put us on the best standing for when the recovery comes. Next slide, please. So in the medium term, as I said a moment ago, let's not look back on this in 6 months and only see negatives. That would be a terrible waste of a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. So let's do some things now which allow us to look back on this and just pull out a few positives that we've taken from this awful situation. So as your head clears, start to formulate a plan, a checklist of things that you want to do. And here are just 4 ideas that I want to put out there. Number 1, review your critical business systems. How flexible are they? How easy was it for you and your staff to efficiently work remotely, work from home? How easy was it to consolidate multi-property operations into one? How easy was it for you to use your systems to respond to this rapidly changing circumstance? Could you make those necessary changes yourself, or did you need help? And if so, was it forthcoming? This is a really important one for me. How resilient is your provider? What are they doing right now? Because for me, a truly business critical system is as much about the provider as it is about the solution. How cost effective are they? Not necessarily the cheapest, perhaps not the most expensive, but when you really look at the value that the system is delivering and how much you're paying for it, are you getting a clear, demonstrable return on that investment? Ultimately ask yourself, are you making do? Because now could be a good time to start some of those conversations. Consider the cost and the complexity of your integrated systems. And I just want to share with you something from my personal life. So last weekend, I sat down with my bank statement and I looked at all of the things that I'm paying for on a monthly basis. And I asked myself the question, am I using those things? Am I getting value from those things? Are there things that I'm actually paying for twice because of the crossover of features and functionality that I get from different things, such as Netflix, Amazon, Disney? And if I was to consolidate those things down into taking them from one provider, would I get a more cost-effective solution? And in times like this where I need to pick up the phone and speak to those providers and maybe negotiate or ask for some help, it's a lot easier for me to do that if I'm speaking to one provider versus 3. So I would encourage us all to do exactly the same things with our business critical systems as well. Now I want to say at this point, what is right for one person or one hotel is not right for everybody. So when I talk about the potential benefits of consolidating different systems into one provider, please don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that there isn't a place for a broad integrated hospitality ecosystem, technology ecosystem. There absolutely is. But there are always opportunities to consolidate and to get better value for your solutions. One of the things that you might like to look at is your payment solutions. I know it's a big topic within the industry at the moment for obvious reasons, but it's one of those areas where a number of technology providers can bring different solutions together to give you a broad portfolio which will allow you to leverage savings. Be ready to nurture those green shoots of recovery. They will be fragile. The first people that start rebooking with us, the first people that look to start traveling again, they are going to want to be reassured throughout that journey. So over communicate with them. Think about how you're going to over communicate with them. Think about the things that you're going to do within your hotel operation to give them that sense of confidence. Again, just sharing things with you that we're seeing other hotels do. They're already talking about having open days for their local community to thank the community for their support and encourage the community to support them as they climb into that recovery stage. And of course, training. We've been doing this as a company, so like everybody else in this industry, we're finding things are a lot quieter right now, and we are addressing the things that we've wanted to do for a long time but haven't had the bandwidth to do. So we are doing internal training for our sales teams, for our marketing teams, for our finance teams, for our support teams, to make sure that we are absolutely on point when that when it's needed. So there are just some very short things to be thinking about, but as I said back at the top, just for all of our benefits, let's do some things now that allow us to look back on this and take some positives from this situation. In 6 months from now, or whenever it is that recovery comes for each of us. On to the next slide, please. So I'm just going to finish up now. My time is up. I'm just going to leave you with, as I spoke about earlier, guestline.com/coronavirus hub is somewhere that we are putting information, articles, blogs, links to our free webinars, and links to other resources, not just about the services that Guestline provide, but also about a number of our partner technology integrations as well. So, you know, please do visit it. Please, if you want to see more of something, then share it with us. At this time more than ever, we are here to help the industry as much as we possibly can. And I know that everybody on this call is looking to do exactly the same thing. Thank you very much for your time, and I'll now hand off to the next speaker.
Thank you so much, James. I will request Ruel to come in next. Aparna, if you can move the slides back to the beginning.
You know what? Let's.
Yeah.
I think you can hear me now. Somehow I got muted earlier. But you know, let's go through the normal process, and I'll come in at the end, please. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay. Let's do a quick audience poll then. We have another poll coming up.
Great. This is Chris Blaine. Can my panelist friends hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Chris.
Good.
Great.
Good, excellent. Thank you. I'm glad everyone can hear me. Again, similar to James, thanks for HospitalityUnited.Club for hosting this webinar today. What I'm going to talk a little bit about is some data that we are gathering and sharing with clients, customers, and generally the tourism destinations, hotel, travel industry. Just share a little bit of data on where we're seeing some movement in recovery. Interesting to see that poll, Q3, Q4 versus 2021, and not surprisingly, we are seeing some similar data to that. But the data is changing. So this path to recovery is not a straight path. And in fact, many times we're finding on this path that you run into a dead end and you need to turn around and find a different path. So the data is changing daily. The global environment is changing daily. And the important thing to do now for everybody is just to stay connected to data sources where you can, to understand how these paths are moving and how this data is changing and evolving every week. So if we can jump into the next slide, just to give you a little bit of context on who Sojourn is, as hopefully it will provide some context for why we have data. We are experts in travel marketing and advertising, digital travel marketing and advertising. We use data that we acquire through partnerships and relationships across the industry. And we take that data and we leverage it to help our advertising partners reach travelers and understand where those travelers are dreaming to go, and then ultimately help move them through that dream all the way to the destination. So we are experts in travel, and we're experts in using data to help link travel advertisers with travelers. So if you flip to the next screen, talk about some of the data we're seeing today. So what you're looking at here is domestic booking data for travelers who are in France on the top or in the UK on the bottom, traveling within France or within the UK. So these charts show on the top in France, right now what we're seeing is a dramatic year-over-year change, right? Not surprisingly, here in March and through up until really the end of the year. And then what we're seeing is a massive spike in both France and the UK in domestic travelers looking to travel within their country, right? And this data is looking at the last 14 days of booking behavior. Okay, so what we're seeing here in this data is I think people are going to start considering travel, and they're starting to make those bookings later in this year, but most specifically, they're really targeting 2021. Now, there's a few things that are likely driving some of this data as well. One of them is that, and many of us will have seen some of the flexible terms that airlines are putting in place now to be able to change tickets. And so we're probably also seeing this booking spike being driven by travelers knowing that they're going to have some flexibility in the ability to move that ticket depending on when things do start to recover. But certainly what we're seeing here is a pretty significant spike up at the beginning of 2021 for domestic travel. That is, again, travelers within France traveling to France, or within the UK traveling to the UK. If you'll flip to the next slide, you're going to see now this is destination France and destination UK, same destination, but the origination markets are now regional origination markets, so those markets around Europe. And what we're seeing there is within France, we're not seeing that recovery come as quickly as we might expect from what we're seeing in the domestic. If you'll remember before, we are still seeing some slight year-over-year growth as we look at January 2021, but it's not as significant as what we're seeing in the domestic bookings. A little bit different in the UK. The UK, we are seeing a pretty significant spike in travelers from the regional markets traveling into the UK. There's probably many reasons for this. Don't want to speculate on what all those are, but likely it has to do with just the travel into the UK as sort of the hub, especially a hub in many ways for businesses that operate within the region. But the interesting information is similar timeline, just different varying interest levels from people that are booking those flights right now. So we expect that the domestic market will likely pick up prior to the regional market picking up. But we're continuing to analyze and watch this data every single day. We pulled this data just a few days ago. It'll likely change again when we pull it again. It's changing and evolving every single week. And so obviously we're going to continue to update our partners and peers in the markets on what we're seeing in this data. And you can access a lot of these reports, which we'll be continuously publishing through sojourn.com. We'll have various blog posts as well, some stuff that we'll share in the market more broadly. But we're continuously looking at this, continuously updating this data. And these are just two snapshots in what we're seeing in some of the travel trends in the Europe region. So a few things that we think it's important to be thinking about right now as you are assessing what is my go forward marketing and advertising strategy so I can regain share, regain travelers, regain people staying at your hotel. So if you flip to the next slide, we have a few things that we'd love to talk about. The first one is about what people are using today when it comes to media. And a big change that we've been seeing here over the course of the last year or so, and now even more so, is the adoption and growth in connected TV. And connected TV is really all of those great streaming television network channels that you can access today, whether it be Hulu or Roku or Netflix or Disney, and all of these have these streaming television options for you. And we're seeing some pretty significant growth in the usage of those connected TV opportunities and TV just in general, right? And certainly since this epidemic has started, we've seen a pretty significant increase in usage, as you can see here on the slide, up 20% just since January. So what we're finding is, right, people are consuming more and more content here through television. And it's an important strategy to think about as hoteliers is how do I reach these travelers in these new mediums? And that's a tricky thing to do, especially for an individual independent hotelier, because you need to have the assets to be able to access these travelers through these types of mechanisms. So we'll talk a little bit about that in a second, but I do think it's important to think about where users and travelers are going to be consuming content, right? And we think it's going to be dramatically increasing on the television and video side. So if you flip again to the next slide, so what can you do about that? Well, right now is a great time for you to be assessing what are your creative assets. If you have the opportunity now to create some video assets that you can start to leverage and use across various video channels. Maybe it's not connected TV, maybe it's just simply YouTube. It could be lots of different ways that you could deploy video assets, but we know that video assets are a much more engaging asset for travelers They're obviously can showcase your brand, your property more effectively through the use of video. And so thinking about how you use this time today to shore up some of those video assets and some of those creative assets more generally. Are you having, do you have assets that use all the different media types that you can, not just video, but native advertising as well? So there's lots of different things you can be doing today to look at your current creative strategy, not just from an imaging standpoint, but from the types of creatives that you're building for your business. And then if you drop down one more slide, the last thing that we want to make sure that we're asking hoteliers to think about is, hey, this data is changing all the time, right? And the important thing is to get creative and think about the ways as you see the data move, how you can adjust your strategy to reach travelers as they begin to enter the market. So really staying on top of that, really monitoring it and watching it, and realizing that at some point you're going to want to make sure you're getting out in front of clients and in front of customers, because the travelers will continue to search. We're seeing it today. There's lots of search activity. There's lots of booking activity from travelers. People are out. They're considering where they're going to go when things start to lift in terms of some of these travel bans, as well as some of these more extreme measures that we've seen with lockdowns across the world. But they're out there. They're searching. They're looking at the next destination for that future. So at what point should you start to get your hotels out in front of those guests? You know, you have to watch and assess the data. One thing we are seeing from some of our partners is they've kept their remarketing strategies live. And the reason for that is if you've got customers that are coming to your property today, regardless of if it's open or not, and they're interested in your property, you want to continue to encourage them to be interested in your property. And by using techniques like remarketing, you have a very, very focused group of people that you're trying to continue to engage and continue to follow along their journey as they consider that booking into the future. So number one, TV and video, a very important channel. It is a growing channel and is even more important today as many of us are here in self-isolation or sort of shelter in place, as they call it as well. So video, really, really important. It's an interesting channel. It's a growing channel. Two, assess your creative assets. Can you access users through these new growing channels? And should you just shore up all your creative assets anyway? Are there different things that you'd want to be doing with your hotel to showcase it a little bit differently? Maybe things that you wouldn't have time to spend on in sort of usually during the course of business, but you've got some time now. Can you shore up some of those assets? And then finally, stay on top of the data. Keep checking in. As I said, Sojourn will continue to provide updates on the regional trends that we're seeing. Stay on top of that data. Think about the things that you can be doing today. Travelers are still looking and still searching. So are there strategies that you want to deploy from an advertising standpoint today to keep those travelers engaged and considering your brands as they go through that planning journey now? So with all that said, that's it for me, and I'll turn it over to the next panelist.
So we have a poll now. Just select the option. We'll close the poll in a few minutes, and then I'll share the result, and we'll move on to our next panelist, Jose.
Shall we go?
So we're welcoming Jose from Travelgate X, connecting the travel industry. So please, Jose, continue.
Good. Well, thank you very much for this opportunity, and I hope I can share with you some of the information that we manage in Travelgate X. Could you please go to the next one? Just a quick recap of who we are. Let me tell you that I think that among the panelists, I think we are the one that is far from the hoteliers. But still, I think we have a lot of information to share with you. So just to give you an idea of who we are hub of connectivity that is helping the interaction of many clients and many suppliers. Clients being mainly tour operators, OTAs, and on the supply side we have channel managers, bed banks, DMCs, and so on. We would like to define ourselves like the Tinder of the industry. To this, if you allow me to say that, we have a significant number of transactions of the volume we handle on a pre-corona kind of status. We on an average we handle something like 30,000 bookings per day, something like a little bit more than 3 billion, 3.2 billion euros of total transaction value, and more than 3 billion transactions per day. This has helped us to. This is a huge amount of data, and we have managed to get some information, and I'll be sharing with you some of the insights that we have got. So please go to the next one. So just to, I'm not discovering anything, but just to give you an idea of the information we handle, we've been showing a steady growth of both search and bookings, and basically just to show you that we've been suffering, as anyone in the company, in the industry, a sharp drop of that obviously no one couldn't anticipate. So this is just to give you an idea of how big the drop is been, but I think we can go through this quite quickly. Please go to the next one. So just to give you an idea, out of the information we handle, this is somehow the behavior of cancellations. I think that uncertainty and scary people has forced all those cancellations. There is a good point here, and I'll share with you some good trends we're looking for the future. But I think at first sight we can see that there has been a drastic drop of increase of cancellations. Everyone has stopped and staying at their home. But I still think most of those cancellations have been for the short haul, for the arrivals within the next few weeks or months. So I think that something we are seeing is, even if the traffic is, the volume of bookings for the rest of the year is not huge, obviously, but still there's some good news, which is cancellation rates are quite normal for the rest of the year. So I think that's something to bear in mind. The behavior, it depends obviously on the combination of source market and destinations. But generally talking, my message is cancellations we've been suffering for cancellations, but according to what we see from our clients, and we're dealing with huge clients like Ctrip, British Airways, Last Minute, and so on. They are suffering from the cancellations within the next few weeks, but things seems to be more normal for the rest of the year. So I think that is a good point we have to bear in mind. Could we go to the next one, please? Just to give you an idea, I think that we may think that the prices have been suffering because of this uncertain time we're living. But I think that what we have seen, it's in terms of prices, the coronavirus crisis doesn't seem to be impacting so much in those prices. And I think have shown here the arrivals for the rest of the year. And still be with me. The bookings we are seeing now for the rest of the year are limited, obviously, because that's obvious. There is a lot of, hopefully, of bookings to be done. But the point is, in terms of prices, it doesn't seem to be for the moment a reaction dropping or taking those prices down. Just to give you an example, those are a couple of markets. So the Americans staying within the States, and the Spaniards staying within or going to Spanish destinations. There is a different behavior, but still we can see that there is a normal going up behavior of those prices. Can we go to the next one? I think this. If I have to stay with one slide, I think that's the one that I would like to focus on. As we told you, we've been there is a number of future bookings on our servers and our systems. But the point is, and there has been a certain period of time, and there we're still some weeks ahead of us when people will still cancel and they stop booking. But according to what we can see, is there is a certain recovery, and I think that according to what we have in our systems, I think from August there's still a sort of a recovery, very, very shy at the very beginning, but it starts to be more important as we get to the end of the year. I think we have a lot of information. I think that if somebody is interested in this, I'm happy to share some more information by markets and by destinations. But my point is, we all guys are suffering, and the rest of the panelists have been very, very great, showing the kind of things that we all can do. But I think that there is my positive message is there seems to be a light at the end of the tunnel. There is only a matter of taking advantage of this time, doing our homework, being ready, we have to deal with this situation, and progressively we should come to normal. Well, this is what the numbers we have are saying. Next, please. I think this is prior. That's it. I wanted to share with you some of the things we are doing to help our community. Remind you that we have something like 350 OTAs and distributors, and more than 450 suppliers that are all interacting through our hub. So as some of the things we are doing for them is to share some information so that they can see, they can have punctual information about what's going on. So we try to, this is a free tool we are giving everyone, and it's been very appreciated by most of them. Something and then on a more normal basis, I think that's it's been a kind of a common sense approach, but I think that we are being in the middle and being somehow the umbilical cordon of those clients with many supplies and vice versa. I think it wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't be fair for us not to do our best. And somehow what we're doing is to help identify those that are have a great value proposal, but not that they're struggling now because of money, because of the cash. So something we are doing is to postpone payments for a few months. Obviously, this is tough also for us. We are a small company, a small startup. So what we are doing is to go to our suppliers and try to get their support in this kind of a crisis movement environment we all living. I think that we have great people, great partners with excellent value proposal, now struggling because of the money, because of cash, but still, we are so sure they're gonna recover in 2, 3, 4 months. That this is what we have forced us, or basically help us to go to our suppliers. Basically, as you can imagine, the big servers, cloud providers, to ask them to help us to help our community, because at the end of the day, we are all together. I think, as the rest of the panel says, this is a matter of working together in order to come back to normal and still and rock it. So can we go to the next, please? Something we were working on, and I want to just to give you an idea of the kind of things we are working, is the launch of a very recent launch of a business model. I don't want to say anything, but I just want you to know that we are working with people like Max and other channel managers in order to give them a possibility to interact directly with, so hotels can interact directly with OTAs. And so basically we are reinventing ourselves in order to use connectivity to give more value to hotels, get them in contact with OTAs that are in really need of good product from hotels. I think that's I think I'm more than available to for anyone they want to know a bit more about this. But I think that's I don't know whether we have something else. Can we go to the next one? That's it. I think that's many things have been done from the experts in hotel business. We just wanted to give you some data, some insights from our more kind of distribution approach to our DR industry. So hope it is interesting for everyone. Thank you very much, and see you very soon.
Thank you, Jose. We will be launching our last poll, and then we move into Ruel's part. The poll results are here. As you can see, but there are 33% who are willing to invest in travel technology, but there are a lot of people that are still in doubt. I'll move into Ruel's part. Ruel, over to you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Sorry for the earlier mute scenario. Please go through the slide next. I basically want to take some general aspects and do what I was going to do anyhow and summarize a little bit what you've heard so far. You know what? It's one of those good news, bad news situations, right? And whenever I'm asked that question, would you like the good news or bad news first? I prefer to have the bad news first. And the bad news is that we are all hurting. Technology providers, agencies, wholesalers, hoteliers, of course, airlines, anything travel related for that matter. Food and beverage guys, restaurant businesses, nightclubs, bars across the world, we're all in trouble. Now, when we say together we can solve the problem, it's so true in too many ways. So at the first level, you know, from a general health perspective right now, we're self-isolating or whatever you want to call it. You know, there are travel lockdowns and bans, as you can see on this particular graph. In order to curb the current threat. There's something I picked up from James. You know, what will be the new normal? And this is something we're going to have to get a grip of as a community. Okay. And that will lead us in a forward positive context. You know, like some of these graphs you're going to be looking at here. This is from us at eRevMax. You know, the volume of cancellations have been massive. And as Jose mentioned, it will filter out a little bit, and it has been, I guess, from their perspective. And it will get normalized at some point. But for now, where we're looking at cancellations, it's normally for periods over the next 3 months. And so, I don't remember the exact numbers, but basically, we are seeing, in effect, over 300% cancellation statistic over the next 3 months. Okay, and I don't think that's unusual. Nobody's traveling. So this is the bad news part of this equation. Okay. To move a little bit more to the good news part. How can there be good news when the news so far is so bad, right? Some more bad news there on that one. And again, to James's point, we faced this thing in there, and I want to kind of fast track a little bit to some of the more that I consider, at least, the most important aspects to triggers in monitoring how do we and when do we recover. Chris mentioned through their information that it looks like majority of travelers are targeting really next year as the time when they're going to be more active or looking to travel accordingly. And please, if I make any mistake, you can please correct me. He also mentioned the aspect that, you know, within regional areas, I would put it slightly differently. In other words, a localization of travel. So being able to market to a more local market may be a very, very important aspect to your recovery path. Okay. And Chris mentioned also, and I think this is absolutely very relevant, is that your creative assets, you know, and utilizing new mediums of marketing in terms of targeting local, get people in through whatever, the Skype, Netflix mediums or whatever. You can talk to him more about that. But basically, I think that is a very true point. Localization over the rest of this year. Okay, so we just had a poll, okay, where we had what do you think as a community here the ADR is going to recover? Okay, and more than 58%. So in other words, way more than half said that it's going to take a year at least. So what are you going to do between now and a year from now? You know, what we're going to have to do is understand our intrinsic demands in different regions. So what's local, what could come from abroad or other parts of the country, wherever we're at. Now, in order to do that, we're going to need to really monitor, unfortunately, this whole viral situation. Okay, so hubs for that. So I think James mentioned they're going to have one. There's going to be one on this HUC, and we're going to be monitoring, and there'll be many more, I'm sure, and you should keep an eye on all of them, because it's very important to understand what are the basic parameters, like lockdowns, like travel impositions, etc. Because unless we understand what could be the intrinsic demand, we really don't have a good way to manage it. Now, this webinar's example is not there for us to profit from you in that sense, okay? But rather bring unity as part of this light at the end of the tunnel. And somebody mentioned this already, that, you know, we're changing a little bit our concepts during this period. Actually, it was James. Like we take this time to make not just efficiencies, as he put it, but in my view, to reassess what's important for our businesses, but ultimately for ourselves. Now, one thing we look towards within a path to recovery, okay? How do you recover? Unless it's with profit. So you have to make money if you're going to recover. It's clear. Whether you're a provider like we are, or whether you are a hotelier, or whether you're an agent, you need to make profit. That's how we will recover. I mean, there's no other way, right? It's not that this happens by mistake. So we need to define those paths and understand the trigger points at which point we will be able to make profit again. And at which point it would be correct to make profit again. Now, some hotels, as example, during this period, are offering, I think brilliantly, self-isolation packages. Okay, so you know, an elderly couple, or whoever it may be for that matter, they don't want to be at home. They don't have great access to food. Maybe there's a hotel still open who still has the ability to support that service. That's one of the things I think should be in consideration at this moment. It's a real hard thing that you can do right now, okay? And within that self-isolation package, understand what should be there included. Like, you know, how do you define the sanitization requirements? How do you define the food delivery aspects, and so on and so forth.